Turn our attention now to events at COP17, the climate change talks currently underway in Durban, South Africa. Earlier on, Samantha Loring spoke to Aly Abou-Sabaa, Director of the Climate Change Coordination Committee at the African Development Bank.
This is the negotiations process, and I think it's really up to parties to try and come up with agreements on how this will move forward. For Africa in particular, a second commitment after the Kyoto Protocol is going to be key, because it is very difficult and probably a significant risk to leave the carbon market unregulated. And this is something that we'd really encourage all parties to try and come up with some form of agreement on how they can move forward on this, including, of course, listening to the concerns that Canada has.
Of course, they do have concerns, and the concerns is that big emitters like China and India, which are excluded from Annex 1 countries and aren't committed legally to reduce their emissions, won't be included in the second commitment period. Do you think that we should have a new multilateral agreement that includes these developing countries?
Well, I think the parties should be working towards reaching such agreement, and it's not going to be an easy thing. Countries, large emitters and developing countries such as China, they have the rights to develop, but they also have a major contribution to those emissions. How can you bring in a balance, and how can they become part of an agreement that would bring in benefits to the whole globe, but still be mindful to the concerns of a growing country like their own?
So, of course, that all will play out in the negotiations. Let's focus in on the African Development Bank. Just give us an idea of the mandate that you have with regards to extending funding to green projects.
Well, the African Development Bank is currently working with all member countries to make sure that they have the necessary policies and strategies and incentives to actually adopt low carbon development path. Africa has tremendous opportunities and can be a very important part of the solution. And we really encourage all parties to see, especially the development countries that make significant contributions to climate finance, to see Africa as part of the solution, not really a problem that has to be addressed. If countries are provided with the right incentives and be assisted with some of the upfront costs associated with these low carbon development paths, certainly Africa can become a very important player in the issue of climate change.
Can you give us an idea of the type of funding so far that has been allotted to low carbon development projects?
Well, the African Development Bank, on average, it changes from year to year, but you're talking about $3 to $4 billion annually of lending to all sectors of the economy. You're talking about energy, agriculture, transport, telecommunication, and so on and so forth, including, of course, private sector. Roughly, very roughly, 1/3 of this amount goes to some form of green development type operation.